Well, folks. Boy, the barbs are coming out for Roman Cabanac. You kind of saw this coming, didn't you? Once you found out that he had been appointed to position in the Ministry of Agriculture, Department of Agriculture, under John Steenhuisen as his chief of staff. That just became publicly known a few days ago, but he's been there since the beginning of August. Ouch. Now, even Gabriel Crouse has weighed in on the appointment of Roman Cabanac under John Steenhuisen with a questionable ad hominem attack. Now, Gabriel asked the question, who in the right mind of any race could say that Cabanac is the best person for that potent managerial government job? Let's see. John Steenhuisen for one, the South African government for another. You or me, Gabriel? Perhaps not so much. Gabriel continues, saying his anti-constitutional secessionist preferences threaten to conspire against the projects of growing productive agricultural output through the classical liberal formula: strong private property, spreading title deeds, free trade, efficient extension services, prudent risk management, and non-racialism in principle and practice. Well, pro-monarchy for sure, that much is genuine about Roman, but secessionist preferences? I'm not sure about that conclusion. On air and in private, I've heard him repeatedly state that he's fine with the South African political system as it is and was under the African National Congress. The country is broken and the ANC is corrupt. But hey, it works well for Roman just as it is or it was. Now, non-racialism in principle and practice, is Gabriel making an argument that this is what South Africa is? Clearly, non-racialism is little more than a bumper sticker in 21st century ANC-run South Africa. Threatening to conspire against the projects of growing productive agricultural output through the classical liberal formula? Sorry? I don't really follow this one. Is the purpose of the Constitution to lay out a system of government and establish protections? So now it's all about agricultural productivity, not everything else. Well, this is gobbledygook. What I believe he intended to do is say that in this position as a chief of staff, with no authority to put any policy in place, with this position as chief of staff, he would hinder agricultural production because he's anti-constitutional. I believe that's where he's going. But the way it's written is just kind of gobbledygook. Gabriel continues saying, Cabanac seems to be far more interested in rejecting that formula. For example, he went to Orania last year, an openly illiberal, racially exclusive enclave in the semi-desert that celebrates architects of apartheid as folk heroes, and concluded that the Volksdorp was so good his audience should focus on building your very own Orania. Does he want to do that from the union buildings? Now, like Gabriel's last statement there, most of what Roman Cabanac says or posts is political hyperbole intended to provoke discussion and challenge people. You don't have to like Roman Cabanac to admit that he is a cheeky bugger. I mean, that he is. He seeks to court controversy. Now, as far as Roman's visit to Orania, almost everyone's going there. That is, except for me. Gate McKenzie, a Nigerian race hustler posing as a journalist, went there. Even Mpofu Walsh, unwilling to make the long, ridiculous drive out there, sought to capitalize on the notoriety of the topic in questioning Gate McKenzie on his program. Now, regarding building your own Orania, that comment, it's not like Roman said, build your own racially exclusive enclave. His commentary noted that unlike most South African cities, the town of Orania functions. It's safe, prosperous, and growing. Don't wait for the government to do it. Do it yourself. Self-bestuur. So what's wrong with that? Now, the problem, folks, with classical liberals is they think government is the answer. More often than not, government is not the answer, and often government is the problem, especially when it exceeds the limited role we granted to protect our common interest. Also, Gabriel, I'm sorry, Orania is not racially exclusive. The fact that most people don't want to live in the middle of nowhere does not make it racially exclusive. Now, it is culturally exclusive. That much is true. And he is correct. They do have busts of Afrikaans historical figures. However, neither Paul Kruger nor Barry Hertzog were the architects of apartheid. Kruger predates the apartheid era by decades and never ruled South Africa, only an independent republic. Hertzog also predates apartheid. Now, the others certainly did play a role in the apartheid era, but let's get the whole story. So, folks, what drove this op-ed in News 24? Well, it seems that many things about Roman disturbed Gabriel. But the proximate cause mentioned in this op-ed is, surprise, surprise, at least 2 tweets on X. Isn't that what always gets people in trouble? Shortly before the 2024 elections, Cabanac posted on X categorically that blacks are not liberals. Now, in a second tweet, he said the DA is a constant reminder that blacks are not liberals. If you want to be a liberal party, it cannot be black run. Well, first, is it a controversial statement that black South Africans are not liberals? Honestly, Is that controversial? Do people actually question that most Black South Africans aren't liberal? Now, never mind the blanket stereotyping of over 40 million people. I also take issue with that by Roman. But the statement itself, how is that controversial? The MK party managed nearly 15% of the popular vote, despite not even being a genuine party and only existing for a few months, not even having constitution or policy positions. Why? Well, in no small measure owing to the popularity of a cult of personality among Zulu voters for a despot named Jacob Zuma, who feels that he's entitled to rule in an illiberal fashion. And they got 15% of the national vote in just 5 months. Now, Crouse himself admits that the latest Afrobarometer survey to publish racial breakdown on the question of accepting an illiberal government showed that 62% of white respondents in South Africa and 65% of Black respondents were willing or very willing to give up the right to vote in regular elections for material gain. 65%. So how exactly is Roman off base here? Now, Gabriel cites the source, albeit to make a different point altogether. That source actually supports Roman's flawed conclusion. And I say flawed because he's stereotyped. Now, Crouse went on to state that this racist remark was made in response to a Sunday Times publishing a section of Bossa leader Mmusi Maimani's book about why he left the DA. Now, Roman placed himself once again on the wrong side of a controversy that has bedeviled the DA since 2019. Bedeviled the DA? Only amongst race hustlers, Black and white, and the legacy media, that is. Now, the DA's current and diverse leadership has until now, according to Gabriel, been tirelessly consistent in arguing that Maimani's race was in no way held against him, and that his withdrawal as leader was based on race-neutral performance metrics. This included the party's electoral decline from 2014 to 2019. Now, folks, this implies the current diverse leadership in the DA is a new phenomenon, but that's not even remotely true. If diverse implies skin color, and that appears to be his point here, the DA has long been a diverse party. Of course, skin pigmentation is not diversity, but rather faux diversity. Skin color does not indicate diversity of thought or experience, let alone one's worldview. It's just skin pigmentation. Now, Gabriel is correct. Race is not why Mmusi Maimani is no longer with the DA. Electoral failure is the reason. Trying to appease people further to the left than the already leftist Democratic Alliance is why the DA failed so miserably in 2019. Now, in a self-published op-ed, Roman Cabanac's former co-host at Morning Shot, Byron Shepard, wrote the following. Roman dared to suggest that Blacks are not liberals, and Crouse is a liberal. Crouse took this as a personal insult. Now, if you ask my friend, the Crown Prince Adil Nchabeleng, he would most likely agree with Roman that Blacks are not liberal. He would argue that many would consider themselves to be right-wing Christian conservatives. So does that make the Prince of the PD people racist? Now, I don't know the PD Crown Prince, so I'll take Byron at his word. But no, it doesn't make him racist. It just makes him someone with an opinion. Now, is Byron correct that Gabriel takes personal offense? I can't speak for Gabriel, and I'm more than happy to have him back on my program should he wish to come on. However, my experience in the United States and in South Africa is that there are guardians of liberal ideals and values, gatekeepers, if you will, who do not take kindly to anyone jostling their apple cart. Sadly, in both countries, far too many of these gatekeepers go off the deep end and demonize any dissenting view or opinion and those who dare to offer them. This is quite illiberal, to say the least. Now, Byron goes on to say this form of ad hominem attack is more insidious when you consider that Crouse was more than willing to use Roman's platform for the purposes of self-promotion. He collaborated with Roman at Morning Shot on more than one occasion for the purpose of promoting his own self-interest and the campaigns he was directly working on. Now, to be fair, Gabriel points out that he did appear on Roman's program multiple times. Now, finally, Gabriel had this to say. I rate Steenhuisen extremely highly. I'm on record as describing him as the greatest liberal leader in the Rainbow Republic due to his policy achievements of 2019, contribution to the DA's electoral rise in 2024, and the GNU triumph of effective cooperation most recently. Come again? The DA's electoral rise in 2024? Now, that's disingenuous. The Democratic Alliance failed miserably in 2024. John Steenhuisen's Moonshot Pact was an epic failure, as was the revised multi-party charter. In 2024, the DA lost 116,796 votes from the result they got in 2019 under Mmusi Maimani, who was forced to leave the party because they failed. But John Steenhuisen got 117,000 fewer votes. Losing voters is hardly an indication of a rising political party. When measured against the Helenzilla result in 2014, the DA has cratered, declining 14%, 585,849 fewer voters from its zenith a decade prior. Since joining the government of national unity, the Democratic Alliance has been prone to compromises. That's a fair statement. But we're not talking about simple things like renaming post offices, that level of compromise, but rather fundamental compromises on key issues. In the past week alone, as Robert Doigan, aka Marabani, also a previous guest on this program, notes, the DA appears to have abandoned federalism. They've embraced the disastrous ANC takeover of the private sector with the National Health Insurance Initiative. Now, these are hardly in keeping with the positions that Gabriel Crouse mentioned earlier about the Democratic Alliance. Now, clearly, Gabriel Crouse has differences with Roman Cabanac, but ad hominem attacks are not helpful, folks, nor is omitting context to make one's argument when attacking someone else. Now, I have no beef with either party. I do, however, take issue with Roman's blanket stereotyping of folks and his love of monarchy, neither of which I can cotton to. I also take issue with the intent of Gabriel's op-ed. Labeling someone racist who does not assert that one group is racially superior, which itself is an idiotic concept to say the least, nor calling for advantage or disadvantage based on skin pigmentation is a dark place to go. So what is Gabriel hoping to achieve here? Sacking Roman? Embarrassing John Steenhuisen? Stirring the pot? Or is it a genuine concern based on flawed assumptions on his part? Ironically, the now press council reprimanded Kamakolo Mochela over at the Independent Line as perhaps the most honest headline on the entire Roman Cabanac appointment thus far. And the title of that article is Minister John Steenhuisen appoints polarizing Roman Cabanac as chief of staff. A shockingly honest headline. Roman is a polarizing figure. But this is the same journalist who libeled Ronaldo Jose, calling him a racist after he released an altered video, which was meant to give maximum shock value. But to be fair, journalists often are not the authors of their headline. Editors are. Whatever the case here, folks, this is very distressing and disappointing to see this sort of carping going on. What are the legitimate concerns about Roman Cabanac serving as chief of staff for John Steenhuisen? I frankly don't give a crap. I don't care. If he does a good job, then he'll probably stay. If he doesn't do a good job, then Steenhuisen will sack him. Whatever the case is, this is unsavory to say the least. South Africa has real issues, not this nonsense. All right, folks, thanks a lot. Catch you next time.